Hello everyone. I hope you guys are having a great day. So for today's video, we are going to continue the series where I play and learn an opening that is not in my repertoire. So if you have any requests, let me know in the comments. Now let's get started. And we're playing 10-0 for this series mostly. So okay, so we have knight f3. Now this is a very flexible opening. So basically anything kind of goes. Um so what we're gonna do is gonna play knight f6. Okay, our opponent is trying to bliss this out sort of. So let's play what we probably objectively like the best opening or like the drawish opening against the English here. So we have c4, knight f3, knight f6, c4, c5. This kind of will transpose to a symmetrical English. Now, I actually have a different repertoire for playing against the symmetrical English. However, I think we are probably going to be deploying the same system that I played in the last video, which you guys haven't watched. Is basically on the Bovnik system against against the which one is it? Yeah, against the Grand Prix attack. So I mean I could actually go play e6 and d5 here. But that kind of goes into what I know, so I would kind of much rather not do that. I'm actually also trying to get myself more used to into the Bovnik system, which I think of course like the difference here is now we play a knight on 2 f6 already, which is why I kind of don't like to play knight f6 right away. So okay, so we have castle. Now we can play d6 first, and then to see just to like see what our opponent is trying to do. I was going to play knight c6 first, but then I was considering a little bit. Okay, so we have h3. I think most likely our opponent will try to play asymmetrical English. So e4 will definitely come at some point. Yeah, d3. So e4 will most likely be there. Now in the symmetrical English, it's just a very drawish opening. There aren't like many plans that we can actually deploy. So one of the plans we can do is of course trying to go for the a6 b5 ideas. We could just go for this immediately. Yeah, we have e4. So we are going to just be trying to go for this right away. And if our opponent plays a4, which they do, now we have the b4 square for the knight at some point. So we are not really worried about it. But now I'm having some different ideas in mind because I don't actually want to play e5 that much. But the problem is that we play e6, that kind of is counterintuitive to what we play, which is we play knight f6. And which is why I've been switching my move order to playing g6 first and be more flexible on where to put the knight. So I think in this case we probably have to kind of just go for it and play e5. Because actually it's the kind of the ultra symmetrical English. However, the difference is that our opponent played c4 and a4 already, so there are technically some differences here. Okay, so king h2. could just, we don't actually have to play bishop e6 because you see white preemptively play king h2, so playing bishop e6 doesn't really do anything because it doesn't actually stop knight d5. So we could play bishop d7 and then we could aim for a b5 break. Although bishop e6, queen d7, of course, is just like a good idea in general. So, but it would play symmetrical. Then, kind of, what is the point, you know? Let's play bishop d7. This is a point here is I actually want to try to see what are the optimum moves and how does it work when I don't play the most optimal moves, because obviously we know the bishop e6 will like need to be played. Okay, we have b3. So b3. So here we look at this position, we can see that d3 is being weakened and it actually provokes me to play knight b4. However, there's one problem in this position if I want to play knight b4 is that there's knight to a2, which pretty much forces me to trade a knight off. So ideally, that's not what I want. Now, can we play knight g8? Yes, we could. Yes, we can. But now the knight on that, this is a problem with the knight on f6, because if our knight is on e7, we would have been able to play f5 already. But in fact, the fact that both of these knights are here actually kind of interferes with our plan. So maybe what we want to do is maybe redeploy the knight into e7. Okay, our opponent plays knight to h4, going for the very aggressive route. So here we can actually play g5. And what g5 does is, like, white will pretty much guarantee to play knight f5. And after we captures, the question here is that what do we want to do with the f5 pawn? Because actually the thing is, after g5 and takes, there's no longer f4. But the thing is, we open up this this diagonal for the bishop. So this is probably a question I might want to have an answer soon. We also would open up the e4 square for the knight, which is actually not very ideal. I think we are going to just be playing knight to e7 because I really want to put my knight on b4 so that I can play b5. I want I can play f4, and I don't think that will actually do much. Because f4, f5, well, we just play g5. And obviously, we can... okay, our opponent is not going for d4 right away. I think he's figuring out something kind of fishy. I have to guess. Now, you see, I was going to try to attack d3, but since our opponent is putting two major pieces to protect d3, I will switch my plan into attacking on b3, and of course our opponent attacks pretty much immediately. So now we can deploy b5. Also now we can actually play g5 pretty much like safely, because there's no longer any knight f5 tricks. But the question is, do we want to kick this off? We probably would want to. But the only question is, why do we allow f4? Is that good for us? I I think here we could just play b5 because I'm realizing that white does have to respond to this. Okay, I think white is starting to play faster in order to kind of flag us out, and I think that's an okay strat. I think what I am going to do is play g5 and forcing our knight back to the white's knight back to f3, and when we're going to play knight to g6. And the thing is, if our opponent plays g4, well, which they do. Now the thing is, the whole thing is blocked, is locked up. So now we just can just play on the king side. Well, not the queen side. Now, is there anything on the queen side we can play off? Probably not. We could start with a rook to a8. Now we're trying to take up this file, and we don't want to capture with the queen. So we are going to play queen b6. Now white can play rook a2. So okay, wow, he found queen b4. This is a very nice move. I think we are going to play rook b8, and the plan here is that if white takes, then we take the a file. If white doesn't, we are going to take the rook, give the a file, and then we are going to capture the pawn. Okay, we have rook to b1. Very interesting. Now here we actually can play bishop to f8 also, because that apparently protects d6 and also opens up another window to play d5. And another thing is we also moving the bishop into a potentially much better diagonal, because if you look, all of our pawns are currently in the dark square, which leads to our bishop being pretty bad. Same goes for the white square bishop, but now the white square bishop is just completely stuck behind all the pawns here. Like the pawn structure for white is much, much worse. Because here we actually might be able to play d5 at some point. Maybe just for the like activity purpose, we could sacrifice a pawn. So we're giving a white a pass pawn. But we can probably do something with the activity if it's worth it. Now here's becoming the problem, because Tenno is much more popular and there are definitely a lot of strong players. However, I am trying my best to commentate a little bit while playing the game, but I'm definitely going to put a lot of my analysis after the game. And I think once it goes down to 1 minute, I probably will focus and I might not even talk. So we'll see. Okay, so I think queen b2. I think we can capture this. If white capture with the b pawn, we are going to just take 2 rooks. We are going to take 2 rooks with the queen, and I think we are better, because our 2 rooks are very active. If white takes with the d pawn, well now white now actually we can't do anything. White has to take rook a8 if it wants to take with the d pawn actually. So yep, takes. Okay, so now we can play bishop to e6. With threatening bishop c4, I don't know if this one move threat is good. I am actually a little unsure. I maybe could have played d3. No, d3 just knight c1. I don't think that's a good move. Queen b2. Okay. Queen b2 is actually very interesting. We actually can play d3 here. I actually like the idea of d3. But knight c1 and I think we are going to go for it. d3. The thing with knight c1 is now we can play knight f4. Knight to c3, not even. Wow. Okay, knight to f4. Okay, now we really want to figure out a way to get this bishop into the game. We probably should play f6 at some point. We could play a next move and then try to play h5 and break through this whole thing. Let's see. I probably will have to focus up here because we are not in a winning position, so I don't have time to talk. Okay, so let's take that. Okay. Now we can play here, and we're threatening rook c2. And if white tries to stop this, well, we just get a free pawn. We actually get this pawn also. Actually, this pawn is much better because we are also threatening mate. Knight e1 is knight e1 is probably the only move to like stop this. Apparently, so. Knight to e1 is probably will be the move here. I have to think about it, what to do for this. The thing is, I don't know if we actually have enough time to. I don't think queen b4 is a good move. I think we're going to just try to move our bishop here, kind of ASAP. Well, knight e1, queen. If knight e1, actually no, knight e1, rook d1. There's also bishop e1, bishop f1. Sorry. Not entirely sure. We could play queen b4, rook c3. Oh, it's taking a long time here. It's probably not, hasn't figured out knight e1 yet. Yeah, we have to focus up here. I don't know. I don't think we have enough time to like redeploy our bishop into b6. And that's probably the unfortunate part. So maybe we can play queen c5, queen c3. That could be an idea that we can look at. But trading queens pretty much like throws away all kind of throws away all of the pressure that we have. So that's not what I really want. We only have 33 seconds, so we have to keep our queens on the board. Unless we have like a clearly winning endgame where I can just pretty much win. This is like, I don't know. But in this position, it's probably going to be a checkmate or something. Wow, our opponent is okay. Okay, our opponent didn't find knight e1. So I think knight e1 it just kind of just is just better for white, I think. Because our bishop is so bad. Because the thing is, maybe this is could be a mistake. Okay, so we can play. Okay, what should we play here? We should play queen e2 because then the knight is protecting this, so we can push d2. Queen f1. Uh, okay, let's play this. Oh no. Oh my goodness. Oh. Okay, I guess it's really impossible to play with 10 minutes on the clock. Okay, but I think that's still a pretty important game because it's Anglo-Indian defense. So let's go from the beginning here. Again, I think the whole point of this series is to try to play different openings, and as long as we can play a good game, a good opening, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Flagging is a part of it, and I mean, let me know you guys would like me to play 15 plus 10, but I think 10-0 is a pretty good time control because I know that a lot of people here are playing mostly 10-0, so they probably would like to see how this is going to be deployed. The game's going to go in a 10-0, and this is a realistic situation because I will admit that I'm not like really fast at all. Sure, like when I play 10-0, it feels like I just play classical. And even if I focus up, you see I get a winning position, but I keep flagging. And that's probably the common problem that I have. And maybe many of you have as well. So, okay. G3. We could play D5, I guess. But again, why are we playing something super symmetrical when they just play this? Like, I mean, okay, it's not exactly symmetrical, but it's still pretty much like more boring than what happened in the game. So I decided to go for this line. And again, I could play d5. Here I was thinking of playing d5 instead of d6. But the problem of playing this is that, again, it's completely equal. And we can play this setup. This is kind of like a reverse Grunfeld, but we don't have a d-pawn. New Grunfeld for white. So, yeah, I guess best move maybe I wouldn't play Bishop F5 necessarily, or maybe I would, but I probably would play this more. If Rook B1, we kind of don't care because again, the whole point of Bishop F5 to stop Rook B1, but that's the only thing that it does. So unless it's like super important or something, and you see like even of getting a pawn here doesn't really help black because of the B7 pin. So maybe Bishop F5, but then again Bishop F5, knight H4, and now look we have to go back, and this is a very easy to draw, so we definitely don't want that. So we play D6, and we kind of accept ourselves going into a weird symmetrical English where both of our knights are on F6, and it's stopping both of us to play F4 and F5 respectively. So H3, just preemptively playing H3 King H2, which is I guess for me is fine. And so far we see there's nothing really wrong, right? Because E4 here is bad because the knight is on F3. If the knight is on E2, sure, or the knight is not developed yet, then yeah, whatever. But this is bad, and we play the best move here because we don't have to care about E5 whatsoever. If we play E5 here, our opponent will be going for A3 first, and now we have to be the one that kind of stops it. Or if we play A6 here, you see now we are a tempo too slow, and let me show you why, right? Because after this, white can play b4, and now our pawn is very weird. Now we have another symmetrical structure on the queen side, and the position becomes unclear. And by unclear, I mean equal. Like it's unclear that who can actually win. So we play a6 here, gaining a tempo instead of playing e5. And if our opponent play a3 here, they are a tempo down because they don't have b4 here. Because if they play here, they play rook b1, we just play b4 ourselves. And now we have a much better position. Oops, my bad. Now we just have a much better position, and d3 becomes a hole that white will have to defend, and our knight is just going to be sitting on b4 and targeting pretty much everything on the queen side. So we force our opponent to play a4, and okay, so we play e5 here. So I guess we could just move the knight back and slowly play this, but I got a little, I don't know, I don't know how to like explain it. But you see, I was thinking of e6, but you see the problem with e6 is that it kind of blocks off our bishop and it doesn't do that much. And plus, it doesn't even support d5. Like, and what I mean by that is because, yeah, this. So we play e5, and we could have played knight d7, trying to go for e5, f5 this way, and then reroute the knight back to f6. I guess that's what we can do. Oh, we can play knight d5. But again, this position, I think white still have the edge here, simply because I don't know what the exact plan for black is, and white is just gonna start, like, I don't know, marching through the entire king side, and we have to play f5, and things get a little dicey. So I play e5 and kind of just closing off this. So I want to play, should have played bishop g5 because we never play h6, and they should have done that. But I guess they don't want to really deal with h6 bishop e3, so, which is fair. So we play h6 ourselves and then play king h7 because we know that is what our opponent is trying to do. And here, actually, I think I've kind of played this out of the English idea, out of the opening, but I don't think that trading the bishop here is bad for black. Because, as you can see, after I play e5, the bishop becomes really bad. And if you watch the game, throughout the game, the bishop was like really bad until the very end. So maybe, I mean, I guess we could just play this, and if queen d2, we don't care. So king c8, king h2, and then we just play this, preparing b5. And again, we don't care about this. So, and yeah, and it seems our opponent would just take this anyway, so we don't really care. Actually, our opponent is probably playing knight e2, and then b5, and then again, this is really close to the position that happened in the game. So bishop d7, I think we play, yeah, bishop d7 and bishop e6 are the same. And again, depends on what kind of plan do you have. Then you go for that move. Go for the square that you would like. Because again, bishop e6, well, what exactly does it do here? Besides attacking h3 and d5, right? Now, d5 is not really attacking unless you want to trade the bishop, which in the game I didn't want to because after knight d5, see, it tells you to go back to bishop d7, so what's the point? But also, I'm seeing a different problem with knight h4 and f4. If white push f5 here, we are forced to be pushed back to bishop to d7. And you look at the engine here, like, the third best move is to drop the bishop back. So then why don't we just play bishop d7 at the beginning and cut off that annoying stuff out of the way, right? So that if f4 happens, we don't care. So here we have b3, which, sort of a weirder move because our opponent could just play a rook move before b3. But okay, it doesn't really matter that much. So we play knight g8 here. It's a similar idea, but I guess the knight e8 was better. I think because I was trying to play knight e7, But it turns out that knight e8, knight h4, and knight c7 was better because here we don't have to move the knight at all. And thus, we don't have to have the pawn structure, the bad pawn structure that locks our own bishop for the entire game. I think this is probably a good plan that I should have seen, I guess. I missed it completely. So knight g8, knight h4, and knight g7, that was the whole point. And here I didn't understand why our opponent didn't play f4. So we could just take. Yeah, and it opens up our bishop. And white probably didn't want that. Okay. And then queen a5, rook ac1. And again, things get a little dicey. And now we can actually play knight d4. Yeah. And then queen b2. And we play b5. Because again, we are breaking through the queen side. And f5 is not really a threat at all. Because we will constantly threatening. So it was pretty much not really anything. So here, white has to pretty much react to everything here, and I don't think white can push f5 and desperately go for attack. White could try f5 here, but yeah, okay. Bishop f5 runs into bishop e5 check, and then we're no longer afraid of the fork. So this just doesn't work for white at all. So rook ad1. Now this is still equal, but now we are better and we have a plan to go for. And I didn't really look at queen a5, but maybe it was actually a good move. We went for knight d4 instead, which is also equally good. And our opponent took. And c takes, knight e2, and then b5. This is simply going with our plan of having a bishop on d7 and a rook on b8, right? We are supporting b5, and white cannot really hold this for any longer. So white has to take 6. And here, this is a last resource for white to kind of hold this structure. And I don't think, and at some point, we will be able to take without the b pawn being able to take this. So rook b1. I think this is not really a good move because this is, you see, because sure, this is defending b3, but is it really, right? Because here it takes, white takes with a b pawn anyways. This is still better for black. However, I don't actually know the concrete way of actually winning this, or at least not really having a plan. Besides the fact that this bishop becomes really bad, it's just really bad. So, and there's no way to sacrifice a pawn for activity. So white effectively is just down a piece. So here, rook b1, we play g5, which I guess is sort of a inaccurate because of what happened in the game. We play knight g6 and then just g4. But this is actually not half bad. I don't understand why knight c6 is good, so maybe I just completely missed why is it good. Let's just say knight f3. And then again, it's the engine knows why this is winning, but I personally don't. Besides the fact that this pawn is super weak. Because if d takes, then we just have targets to play on, and this is easy. But this is a little more of like planning into the end game, where we actually forced to keep our knight, because if we don't, then d3 kind of becomes like sort of invincible, and our bishops won't be able to do anything. So g5, knight f3, and then we play g6, allowing g4. Sure, that destroy our f5 idea, but I don't think it matters. And in fact, now that I look at it, maybe we shouldn't play f5, because let's just say I want to play rook b2, and then we play f5 here. What happens is this opens up the bishop. So now we just activating white's bishop for free, and then let's say g4, bishop e6. Like, we are still better here, but now the bishop may come into the play at any point. So we probably don't want that. So g4, go back to this position. We could have played queen b6. Rook a8 is also good because when a general rule of thumb, when you see an open file and you can occupy it, then you should do it because whoever occupies it first will have the advantage. So you see here, we play rook a8. Our opponent plays rook to a1, and we just play queen b6. This is just a nice follow up because we actually want to capture the rook with the rook if the rook trade happens, and then we just get the open file. Now our opponent could have played rook a2 and get the open file, but I don't think it would matter too much because again we have the bishop pair, and after doing this I realized that the open file is actually not the most important thing because as long as we take on c4, we would have control of at least one of the files. So this, we just play rook b8, and then rook a1. What is white gonna do? Because queen a7 doesn't really effectively do much, right? So bishop e6, and let's say queen a6, or I guess queen a7, probably a bit better. Doesn't matter. Take 6, and now we probably will take and play rook to b3. So in that case, we are fine because we have the bishop pair advantage, and we can definitely reroute our bishop, so we are not really afraid. So queen b6, queen b4. Now rook fba is definitely the best move, and for some reason, this is the best move. My guess is that, okay, I can't really take on a1, so I guess that's the best move. Then we play bishop e f8, and yeah, our opponent, I guess our opponent finds the right idea, right? Because again, the idea of this is that I don't know what move like white can actually make to make this like sensible. But let's say our opponent played knight c1, then d5 just wins on the spot. Because after this, well, we take this, and then we capture this. And again, in this position, the two rooks are much better than the queen here because we have the two rooks are very active on the open file, and we have the bishop pair. So we'll probably just win the game pretty much like really quickly because the knights are not really doing much, and our bishop becomes really active now with the bishop pair. So I want to find queen d2. Of course, queen d2 makes more sense than queen e1 because, I mean, why would you want most of the 2200 would instead of e1, and the difference. Oh, sorry, my laptop just froze. Like, cause queen e1 here actually protects f2. So okay, queen d2. So we know that's the best move, and this is force because once again, if pawn takes c4, then we will have the very active bishop. So, oh, not bishop, active rooks and bishops. And if you look at this position, what does white do? Everything is just so tight on white side, and as black, we can do whatever we want. So rook takes, and then d takes. Now we play bishop e6, which is, I guess, this one move threat actually is pretty good. So now our opponent will play queen to b2, and okay, so d3 was a little too quick from my end, but here I only have 1 minute, so I wasn't really sure if rook b8 was a sensible move here. So I was looking at rook b8, and I know that this is definitely a good move. There's no way this is a bad move. And I guess I miss the move. how do I say it? So basically, rook b1, rook b8. Somehow I saw knight c1. Oh, you take this. Okay. And then, okay, so white can't really play knight c1, so queen c2. Well, queen c2, we have d3. Yeah, queen c2, we have d3 now. Because we take on f2, and we suddenly infiltrating into white's position. And white still have weakness that white has to do here. So, like, I mean, rook f1, we just go back to queen b6. And knight c1 is just a super passive move. And now we have knight f4 as our plan. Because the whole point of me playing d3 here is to try to get the knight on f4. But then I realized that it actually is not good. Because knight c1, knight f4, there's bishop f1, and we lose a pawn for no reason. Like, we just threw away, like, the advantage. Because here we still better simply because of activity and the piece activity. Our rook and queen is much better than white's rook and queen. But it's now, like, much harder to win, per se. But somehow our opponent played knight c3, which I was a little surprised. But then after the move knight d5, I kind of figure out why. So knight f4, knight d5, bishop d5, c takes c5. Okay, so here we are winning. And rook c8, okay, rook c8 is winning, per se. But here we could have just played knight e2 and to cut off the f2 pawn and force white to react and protect this. So rook f1. Well, now we just played that. Now we just played this. I don't know. Is rook b8 equally good? Rook b8 is fine. But no reason to do that. So we play rook c8, which is the second best move. And here I don't understand. Our opponent just missed knight e1. I mean, he thought for how long? Like, he thought for 4 minutes and he missed knight e1. And here I thought that I would probably not be better here. But wow. So, okay, queen b4. This is probably what I would play because, say, rook d1. Yeah, if rook d1, we have rook c3. Now we're targeting this and we're not really afraid of losing this pawn because they say bishop here. We just play this and we're fine. And also bishop e1 drops the e4 pawn as well. So white actually does not have enough resources to capture this d3 pawn. And again, bishop f1 here is not a move. Oops. That was not what I planned. That's just equal. So queen takes e4 here. We just take the pawn. And yeah, because here we know that we're completely winning. Queen takes f2. Queen takes b3 is equally good, but just as a habit, right? When you see that you can capture either pawn, you should go for the pawn that gives you more infiltration. So queen takes f2 is clearly just better because queen takes b3. Well, now here white can still sort of defend. Of course, engine say it's still -4 and sort of stuff like that. But here at least we have at least white can still hold a d2 square for a while before we can win. And remember that we only have like 30 seconds here. So queen b2, queen g1. Okay, queen c2. Anything wins here, but I am playing a little bit too inaccurate, so yeah. So here, okay, queen b2 doesn't matter. I think here is probably should be good for us to end the analysis because here it's just simply me flagging and not figuring out the move here, right? Because here we're still winning. Knight e1, bishop f2, and we're fine. And of course, all of this is just like me flagging, and unfortunately, we just lose. So I think that this is a very good example of how I am not going to be getting to the rating that I usually get pretty easily because this is 10-0 and I probably will flag a lot more. And again, I am not a fast Blitz player. I'm a decent Blitz player, But I am definitely nowhere near like Daniel Naroditsky or Hikaru. So I don't have the good ability to play within time scramble, and our while our opponent have so much time. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you guys would like me to play in a longer time format, or like me to play 2 games and then go through the analysis afterwards, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.